Okay, we're back in Luke chapter 6 and continuing on in the sermon, what's called sometimes the Sermon on the Plain, which is similar to the Sermon on the Mount and possibly the same exact sermon, but Luke has different purposes and he focuses on different parts of the message than Matthew does. Last time we had spoke about that, judge not, you'll not be judged, condemn not, and you'll not be condemned, forgive and give. And so these four commands: don't judge, don't condemn, forgive and give, and really speaking not so much with specific instructions like Paul does, kind of laying it out in a very detailed way, but really pointing us to the attitudes of grace, of not being one so quick to condemn and to judge others, but to being ready to give and to forgive. And that's our calling. And we go from there to a next section, which deals with another issue, which is how do we correct one another? How do we help each other as Christians? Because we know that, I know for me, as I look at my life growing up, I've had several outstanding, there's quite a few of those conversations where someone has confronted me on how I've behaved or something I just did. And I hate those conversations with a passion. I hate them so, so much. But I'm also thankful for them too, because those are the moments when I really have to take a look at myself and say, do I need to make some changes here? And do I need to grow? And many times, thankfully, they were done by true friends who were kind and gracious and helpful to me. And even though it was very uncomfortable, I took some things to heart, and I think it helped me. And we need that. We need that correction because we don't see ourselves clearly. We're oftentimes the last to realize our own weaknesses and sins. Everyone else can see it, but we're kind of last to get the memo. And so the question is, how do we help each other in this journey? We all have our weaknesses and flaws and struggles, and how do we do this? And first, that setting up that establishment of that we're not coming at each other to judge and condemn each other. It's really about forgiveness and about bringing people to a place of such grace and growth. And so now he's going to tell them a parable to help us understand it better. And I would say it's really actually, let me see, I think like four parables he tells. Seems number four comes up quite a bit here. So here are parables for our consideration. And I think that the focus is on, we'll call it correction, if you will. How do we help each other? Helping a brother. So let's go through those. And let's start here. Bob Fowler, would you just read the first couple verses? We'll take the first two parables, if you will, two pictures that he gives to help us understand things better. So just verses 39 down to 40, just those two verses.
He also told them a parable. Can a blind man lead a blind man? Will they not both fall into a pit? A disciple is not above his teacher, but everyone, when he is fully trained, will be like his teacher.
Okay, here's the first parable. And what does he say? He gives us a picture. What is the picture?
A blind man trying to lead a blind man.
Okay. Blind man leading a blind man. And what happens to blind men who lead blind men?
They both fall in the same pit.
They both fall into a pit. It's a very vivid picture. You can see it. You can see like a blind man walking along the road trying to find his way, and some other guy comes up to him and says, "Here, let me show you." And he grabs his hand, but he can't see either. And they're just banging into walls and falling into pits. It's a pathetic look. But that there's this blind man who thinks he can see, trying to lead another blind man, and it just leads to disaster. Okay. That's the first picture we're given. What's the second picture? Verse 40.
Teacher and a disciple.
A teacher and a disciple. And what does he say about the teacher and a disciple?
The disciple will be like his teacher once he's fully trained.
The disciple becomes like his teacher. Okay. That's sort of your, okay. I can see that, you know, you can see a picture of a mentor, of a teacher and a student and a disciple, a master and an apprentice. And when the disciple is fully trained, when he reaches the fullness of his training, he will become just like his teacher. Okay, that's the second one. All right, now what does that mean? Well, he's going to get into sort of what he means in the next couple pictures here. So then we'll put it all together. So let's read the next parable here. Verse 42. Really, it's just verse 42. Bob.
Did you want 41 too?
Oh, yeah. 41 and 42. Thank you. 41 and 42. Bob Thomas, would you get that for us? 41 and 42.
Why do you see the speck that is in your brother's eye, but not notice the log that is in your own eye? How can you say to your brother, brother, let me take out the speck that's in your eye, when you yourself do not see the log that is in your own eye? You hypocrite, first take the log out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to take out the speck that's in your brother's eye.
Okay. What's the parable here? He again paints another picture for us. And what does he say? This time he personalizes it. He takes it to them, you. What does he say about them?
Well, I think it's a follow on to his previous comments about judging. So it's possible to see this tiny little thing in your brother and miss something that's really big in you.
Okay, so you see a speck in your brother's eye, but you have a log in your own eye. It's a great picture. It's just, you can see it. It's like this huge protruding branch coming out of your eye as you're looking at, you got something there. Let me help you with that. It's like, and then what does he say? Does he say,
You're a hypocrite.
you hypocrite? You hypocrite, because you can see and you call out and you try to remove and fix your brother for his little issue there that you're seeing. Meanwhile, you've got a big one and you're not even aware of it. You're not addressing it. You can't see. So you hypocrite. So what should you do then?
Deal with your own issue first and then take care of his.
Take out your log first, and then you can help your brother with his speck. All right, so let's connect them here. So we're coming back to, can you see the connection between this parable of the speck in your brother's eye and the log in your own eye? How does that connect to that first parable, the blind man leading a blind man, and they both fall into a pit?
Trying to help somebody that you have no authority to help, really.
Yeah, you're coming along. You have it's not that so much that you need authority. You don't need authority to help someone.
You need to know more than the person you're trying to help, whether it's a stronger faith leading someone in your religion, or telling someone that's doing something wrong. You can't be totally wrong yourself. You can't be a teacher if you haven't learned. And so a teacher versus a student, how do you make a student as good as you if you're not good to begin with?
Yeah, I think you kind of nailed it there with that. So let's come back to the blind man leading the blind man. What is meant by the man who is blind then? If these are all parables, they all go together. What is meant by the man who is blind? What does he mean by someone who's blind? He's not talking about a little blind. What can't he see?
Whatever the issue is, I mean, it's he's just not seeing the reality.
His own faults.
Yeah. He cannot see the reality. He cannot see his own faults. there is no self-reflection here. But he can see the faults in other people. I've heard it said this way, that the problem with racists who say, for example, a white supremacist who would look out at all the black people and say they're terrible, they're lazy, they're this, they're that, and all these terrible things about them. The problem is not that he's wrong about them, because they, like every other human being, is lazy and proud and has all those sins. The problem is that the problem with the white supremacist is he doesn't believe it about himself. So he sees the sins in other people, which he's actually correct about, but he doesn't see the sins in himself and in his own people. That's the problem. It's not that he is misunderstood, because you can find evil in anybody. You can find all the evil out there. The trouble is you're not seeing the evil in you, in yourself. And so you're blind. And so the blind man is the one who's no self-reflection. He has no understanding of his own faults, but he can clearly see the faults in others, which is really there. He clearly sees a speck in his brother's eye. There is a speck in that eye. There is something wrong. But he doesn't see his own faults. And therefore, when he goes to try to help, they're both going to fall into a pit. It's going to go bad. You mentioned something about the teacher and the disciple.
Yeah, I said you can't teach somebody if you haven't been educated yourself. If you don't know the truth to begin with, how do you teach someone else the truth?
Yeah, exactly right. The teacher, basically the blind man teacher, will train up blind disciples, if you will. If that makes sense. But basically, you become you're going to instruct someone, and you're gonna play the role of the teacher to him as you correct him, and your disciple, shall we say, is going to become just like you, which, as you're finding out, is blind and a hypocrite. So in fact, that's what Jesus says about the Pharisees. Didn't he say it about that? About you travel heaven and earth, you travel the ends of the earth to make one disciple. Remember this? And he says, and you make them, twice the disciple of hell as you are, basically. They become just like you. They become just like you. Which is a fearful thing as parents. It's like, for all that you say to your kids, they just can't help but become like you, isn't it? No matter how much you say, do as I say, not as I do. Their biggest lesson is they just they take on you. They become you. You're their teacher. Even though you might wish they would go a different way, they still go your path. So that's the second part. So when we come to this part here, I think that is clear. So what is that, when he says you take the log out of your own eye, what does that practically mean for us then, to take the log out of our own eye before we take the speck out of our brother's eye?
I think it calls for regular self-examination.
Yeah. This calls for regular, I think, your self-examination. And these are moments, it's really interesting, when you see something in another person that is troublesome to you, that really gets under your skin. How many times have you found it to be something that, if you really start looking into, it's like, they annoy me so much because they're just like me. That's kind of how it is. They're just, their proclivities just bother me because they're often like a mirror to myself. And so oftentimes we are most sensitive to the weaknesses and the sins in other people that we are struggling with ourselves. And so this is a moment now of self-reflection, self-examination, to really address our own sins. And how do you take the log out of your own eye? How do you do that?
First, you have to see it.
Yeah.
I didn't hear that last comment. What did he say?
First,
ahead.
you have to see it.
Yeah.
I think it's helpful, regardless of how long you've been walking with the Lord, as you disciple people, you still have brothers and or sisters in the Lord who will continue to work with you and walk with you and disciple you, if you will, because I know the people I've discipled over the years, it's such a joy when they get to the point where they go out and disciple others. And then it's good as believers if we have a brother or sister that we could be totally accountable to,
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
It can be very helpful to have someone you can share your struggles with and you can be honest with. And you know, and seeing first our own weaknesses is really important. One thing it does for us is it helps us to be more gracious and patient and kind when we address, because to take a speck out of someone's eye is a very sensitive procedure. You don't just grab it with your hand, you know, you're very careful about it. Very, very gentle. And so, and the only way to be gentle like that is to really, to be completely aware of our own sinfulness, our own need of grace, that we're not better than them. We're no better than the other person that we're trying to help. We're just as much a sinner. We're struggling ourselves, and I just want to help you, and you know we can help each other maybe. But yeah, seeing first our own weaknesses. But when you see your sins and when you are convicted of that, how else are we commanded in the scriptures to remove those logs from our eyes so that we can see more clearly?
How what?
So when we see our weaknesses, we see our sins.
Mhm.
So we're dealing with, we have a brother who's in sin, who is unaware of it typically, that they just like we are. And then, but we can see something, we're concerned about it. So we go to them, we look at but we first have to take out our log. And so we look at ourselves, and then maybe we see some of ourselves in this as well. We can see that we have also sinned. We have also been, if I'm addressing someone who has been bitter and struggling with that, with unforgiveness, and just in a dark place, before I maybe speak to them, I start looking at my own heart and I see, wow, there's bitterness in here too, and that I've got some darkness I need to deal with. What does the scriptures tell us to do when we see our own sin? What do we do with that? How do we remove it?
Confess it.
Yeah.
I always respected somebody in the military who was some senior officer who was very transparent. Because they had the opportunity to just be righteous in their own eyes and flame throw you. But there are other guys that you'd want to follow who were much more transparent and admitted to their own screw ups. You respected them a lot more.
Interesting, isn't it? It's really interesting. And how, I know for me, it was like when I was, it's encouraging to see someone else that you respect struggling. You know, it's kind of like in a baseball game, like when Daniel was in Little League, you know, he had trouble one year just hitting the ball. And the greatest thing was when the star of the team, the best ball player on the team, struck out. That put all the other players were completely relaxed after that point because it wasn't a shame anymore to strike out, to miss the ball. And when someone who is that you respect and look up to is vulnerable like that and shows their own weaknesses, it's a very helpful thing. Makes it much more receptive, and you know that's a man who is in the light, who's not in the dark anymore, who can see, and that man can do some good in those cases. Well, he concludes with one more parable in this passage here about. Well, maybe even two more, but we'll go with this. A lot of Jack, you want to get this one for us? 43 and 44. Let's just do that for a second.
For no good tree bears bad fruit, nor again does a bad tree bear good fruit. For each tree is known by its own fruit. For figs are not gathered from thorn bushes, nor are grapes picked from a bramble bush.
Okay, here's another parable. What's the parable here?
The fruit tree.
Okay, fruit tree. And what's the lesson of the fruit tree here?
Know the tree by its fruit, and that a good tree is not going to produce bad fruit.
Good trees bear good fruit, and bad trees bear bad fruit. Pretty simple. Everyone is known by their fruit, right? So the question is, okay, what does that have to do with what we're talking about here? What is in our situation, what would you say is the tree, and what's the meaning of the fruit? What does that mean?
Well, we are the tree,
Teaching,
and the fruit is,
Our
what we-
deeds, how we live.
yeah, how we
Okay.
live.
All right, so the tree is, we are, in a sense, we're a tree here. We are those who have been planted. We've received the gospel. We're his disciples. You know, outwardly, you can see that. The question is, are you a good tree or a bad tree? And you said, Bob, what was the fruit meaning of the fruit?
The fruit that you bear,
Yeah.
how you live your life.
Yeah. Yeah, the fruit is our deeds. And what's the fruit of the spirit, if you remember?
Love, joy, peace,
Love,
patience,
joy,
kindness,
peace.
goodness, gentleness, self-control.
Yeah. The fruit of the spirit. All right. Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, gentleness,
Goodness,
goodness,
self-control,
faithfulness, and self.
faithfulness.
Right? How many is that?
Should be the divine 9.
Yep, that's 9. Okay. That's the fruit of the spirit, all those things, that love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, and that's the fruit that we produce. And you can see all those things in play here as in how this one chance now, in this context of correction, how the fruit is seen here, that we could say almost like it's a real test now, these moments of correction. So when everything's going well, when everyone's feeling good and everyone's behaving well, you don't really know. I mean, anybody can believe in sunny weather when everything's going great. The challenge is when trials come, when there's these moments of testing where we are confronted, where sin enters the picture, something's been exposed, and how we deal with it now. What is it? That's where the fruit now begins to be seen. So here's the situation now, a very uncomfortable situation of trying to help a brother who has a speck. Something's wrong. He's not seeing clearly. He's in a bad place or whatever it is, and you want to help him. Very awkward thing to do. And so the fruit will be seen in 2 ways. One is by the one removing the speck who's trying to help the brother, and also by how it's received by the brother or sister as they receive that kind of correction. Do they receive it with patience, with goodness, appreciation, with self-control? How is that? It's all kind of coming together here. And this is a really it's really interesting. The scene that comes up is, how do we know? Judge not, you'll not be judged. Condemn not, give, forgive. That grace that we're talking about, now it's on display in a very specific situation as one trying to help another. So he has one more parable here. Let's read that. Rob Roy, want to get that for us? Verse 45.
The good person out of the good treasure of his heart produces good, and the evil person out of his evil treasure produces evil. For out of the abundance of the heart, his mouth speaks. That's scary.
So now he says, gives another now similar to the last one. Good trees bear good fruit, bad trees bear bad fruit. But this time he describes not good trees, but what? Good.
Hearts.
Good person out of his, and with a good treasure of his heart. Okay, so a good person with a good heart produces good. And likewise, the evil person, evil treasure, if you will, produces evil. And then the question is, he applies it for us. What does he mean by produces evil? Well, what's the situation he's talking about here? His last words in this section.
Well, he's talking about the condition of the heart,
Yeah. And what reveals the condition of the heart?
the words.
The mouth speaks out of the abundance of the heart. What is in the heart will come out of the mouth. That's where it's first seen. So it's interesting. He produced the evil. The focus of the evil is not the evil deeds of murder and theft and things like that, but it starts immediately with the words, what we say, the anger, the fury, the rage, the judgment, the malice, the bitterness, all those things that come out of the mouth, showing forth what's in the heart. And you've said it was a little scary there, Rob, right?
Yes, it was a little scary.
That's, you know,
Given what comes out of our mouths sometimes, you read that passage and you realize you got a long way to go.
Particularly when you're driving on the highway.
yeah. You know, it's funny. It's like there are times when it's like you are just you feel like, you know what, I'm a good person. Because life is good. No one's testing me. No one's giving me a hard time. I'm just kind of going my way. And then you go to work, you get a little trouble from the boss, says something or whatever, another employee or somebody's nasty to you or a neighbor. And it's amazing that the rage and the ugliness that comes out of you, like, where did that come from? That wasn't there before. And now it's like, no, it was always there. It just had never had a chance to come out, because when all is calm, it's kind of like, think of it like this way. It's like you have this glass of hot coffee, this cup of hot coffee. No one can see what's in that cup until they bump into you, and then it spills out and they get burned. That hot coffee was always there, but it took someone bumping into you to bring it out, what was really there. And that's sort of kind of what's happening here. It's like those are moments of testing that will really show us where we are in our sanctification. It's like in those moments when everything's going well, you have no idea how well you're doing, whether your heart is good or not. It's when things go bad. It's when when your patience is tested, when you're confronted, when things are not going your way and you're frustrated, disappointed, and things like that. And then you begin to see what's really in your heart, and it can be scary when we realize, boy, there's a lot more darkness in me than I thought. I thought I was doing pretty good. I guess I got a way to go. Hey,
Well,
Lisa.
Jesus himself tells us that none of us are good.
Yeah. Yeah, and we're all that way, and none of us have sinned. All of us have sinned, and we've all fallen short. And remember that passage in Romans 3 about it speaks quite a bit about the poison of vipers is on our tongues, and it's like it's one of I don't know about you guys, but I think more than anything, my words convict me more than anything else, and the words that come out of my heart more than anything else. I can, yeah. And it's often in those situations where there's that kind of conflict and tension that you really begin to see what's there. So those are our parables to help us kind of grasp it. I think each of those pictures is pretty powerful and convicting and challenging for us all to reflect upon. So but you can see that the importance of it, because if we don't attend to it, we come back to that first one, we're like blind men trying to lead other people that we think are blind. And it just ends with us both in a pit. Nothing good comes it. If we don't attend to it, and this is the second one's kind of neutral, because it's like if you're trying to help someone, they will become like you. And that can be a good thing if you have the fruit of the Spirit and you're bringing good treasure, you're humble and gracious and patient and kind, they can become like that. But if you're not, they will become like you. And the nastiness in your own life will be spread to them as well. The disciple will be fully trained to be just like his teacher. And then the speck in the brother's eye, and taking that log out, starting with that self-reflection before even speaking to others.
What's interesting is the teacher and all these things, last week's stuff and this week's stuff, models this stuff. He has all the credibility in the world because he hasn't flunked on any of these rules.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, if you teach it, if you can find it, a variety of episodes in the teacher's life where he has not followed these rules, he has no credibility. Even though you may not charge him with that, that's how you see him.
Yeah.
So you can't do that here.
No, it's true. And you know, Christ, our teacher here, we look at him, and he is on full display with his patience and kindness, which is amazing. You know, we're gonna be looking at this Holy Week and the denial of Peter during this week, and his absolute failure, and how Christ is so gracious and gentle and kind with him as he restores him in the end. It's encouraging. It's really encouraging. But any case, these are great passages, and we come back to this, and after all that conviction that we feel, because we're going through this passage, I feel it. A lot of conviction in these things, and then to come back and say, don't forget, there is forgiveness. Forgive, and you'll be forgiven. However you've messed it up, you know, forgive, and you'll be forgiven. It's a mess, and we forgive one another, and we live in a community of grace where we can, you know, we can work it out. We can grow together. We can forgive each other. And just to get away from the judging and condemning one another, seeking that. So, all right. Moving along here, verse 46 and down to 49. Claudette, would you get that for us? 46 to 49?
Why do you call me Lord, Lord, and not do what I tell you? Everyone who comes to me and hears my words and does them, I will show you what he is like. He is like a man building a house, who dug deep and laid the foundation on the rock. And when a flood arose, the stream broke against the house and could not shake it, because it had been well built. But the one who hears and does not do them is like a man who built a house on the ground without a foundation. When the stream broke against it, immediately it fell, and the ruin of that house was great.
Yeah. All right. He adds another parable, another, just a simple statement here. Why do you call me Lord, Lord? By the way, you know what it means to call him Lord, Lord? As opposed to just calling him Lord?
Well, if they repeat something in Judaism, it's for emphasis.
It is for emphasis.
And
it's
it shows closeness.
Yeah. You know, we're told that every knee will bow and every tongue confess that Jesus Christ is Lord, to the glory of God the Father. So even the devil will say Jesus is Lord. But the devil will not say he is Lord, Lord. Lord, Lord is like when God appears to Moses, he says, Moses, Moses. When he appears to Samuel, he says, Samuel, Samuel. And to Paul, Saul, Saul. And even Jesus says it to Peter, Simon, Simon. It is a term of affection, closeness. And so it's not just that I'm saying Lord, but it's almost like saying, I love you, Lord. It's sort of not just your Lord, I concede, but I love you as Lord. And so it's a term of affection and devotion to someone. Why do you call me Lord, Lord? Why do you declare your love for me as your Lord? And, but, what's the problem?
Not do what I say.
but don't do what I tell you, right? So how does that make sense? How can I be your Lord, whom you say you love, and you don't do what I tell you to do? I've given this analogy, I think, before, but when I was teaching high school, and if I come into a classroom and I say, greeting students, I'm your teacher. Do you believe that I'm your teacher? He says, yes, Mr. John, you are a teacher. In fact, Mr. John, you are our favorite teacher of all. I'm glad to hear that. Okay, now if you would take out your books and let's start on page 1 and work on assignment number 2. And they just sit there and they keep talking to themselves. They ignore me. And I'm like, students, yes, Mr. John, am I your teacher? Of course, you're our teacher. You're our favorite teacher. Didn't we just say that? Great. Would you take out your books and turn to page and get to work? And they just ignore me and they just keep talking to each other. They do their own thing. And the question is, do they really believe that I'm their teacher, let alone their favorite teacher? The answer is absolutely not. They say it. But if they did believe it, if I truly was their teacher and maybe even their favorite teacher, then what would they do?
Listen to you.
Yes. Listen to me. They would do what I told them to do. They would do the assignments I told them to do. Not that they would get it perfect, not that they would get hundreds in their tests, but that they would try and they would seek to do the things I asked them to do. We're not talking perfection here, but appreciation and consideration and obedience. Yes, you're trying it here. That's the sign that I'm really Lord, that you ignore me and you feel no need, that you are willing to listen to my words and to hear my teachings, but not apply them in any way. That's not how you treat someone whom you call Lord, Lord. There's a contradiction there. And so what does he say? He gives 2 examples now. For those everyone who hears my word and does them. Hears my words and does them. So we're going to take all those teachings we've heard already in this passage we just talked about dealing with a brother and how we look at ourselves, how we don't judge, we don't condemn, we forgive, we give, how we seek to be merciful, giving and just loving even our enemies, blessing those who curse us, praying for those who abuse us. All those are really powerful commands and also pretty clear commands. So we've heard all those things in this sermon. And he says, those of you who hear my words that I've given you, and you start putting them into practice and do them and take them seriously. So you actually look at them again and you say, how can I put this to practice in my life? How can I apply these things to me? All right. So those who hear my words and does them, what is he like?
Man who builds a house on a good foundation. We've got a solid foundation.
Okay. A man building a house dug deep and laid the foundation of the rock, on a deep rock foundation. And what happens to the man who builds his house on a deep rock foundation when a flood comes?
It stands firm.
Yes. This house stands firm and is not shaken. That's pretty simple. However, there's others. Everyone who, notice what he says, who hears my words and does not do them is like what?
Man who builds without a house without a foundation.
Man built, house with no foundation. And when the flood comes, what happens?
It'll be destroyed. It'll flounder.
Yeah, the house is destroyed by the flood. But by the way, it was interesting when we went to Tennessee a couple years ago to do some work. There was a big flood that was in this town, Waverly, Tennessee. There was a huge flood that came out of nowhere. The levee broke and it swept through the town like a tsunami. It was really remarkable. But in this town, there's a lot of poor areas, and a lot of these homes, they're just on slabs, and there's no foundation. They're not really built in, and they're just swept away. And so you come down there after the flood, there's nothing there. These homes that were standing there, they're gone. They're just swept away. And so they're rebuilding for them now. And one thing that they did was they didn't do slabs anymore with these new homes they're building in. They dug foundations for them and they set them up. They put them on real foundations. They elevated them. So it's like, it's going to take a much bigger flood or hurricane to destroy these places. They're not just going to get swept away by a river. They may get flooded, but the houses are going to stand now. And it was like, you really saw firsthand, wow, how important that foundation is.
That
And you know,
that last line lends itself to many interpretations. I mean, is it speaking eternally speaking, you'll go to hell, so to speak? Or does it mean that whatever you are, that situation is, you're going to fail, relationally or whatever? But,
yeah, I mean, you can, yeah, you can say that it's just whether it's, I don't think Jesus doesn't really get into. It's kind of vague again. It's a principle kind of laid out for us. How, does it maybe refers to someone's eternal. He does say, for example, to the sheep and the goats, those who didn't take care of the least of these, my brethren, which he commanded us. We're going to hell, not because they did evil things, but because they didn't do what he commanded us to do, that they had no concern for the poor, the weak. Whereas the sheep, of course, are those who basically applied what they've been learning. It's not about, you can go to seminary, you can learn all these things, you can memorize the whole Bible, for goodness sake, and you'll never have more knowledge than the Pharisees had, that's for sure. They knew the Bible inside and out. You will never exceed them. Their problem was not, they had a big house, but a big house is useless if there's no foundation for it to get swept away. And so our houses might be small, but make sure you have a foundation for them. And that foundation is what? The house is the hearing of the word. What's the foundation?
The doing of the word.
Doing of it. That's the real test. And that's when the test comes, when the trials come, then you begin to see, will this house stand? And I know many that it happens over the years where it's been sad. I've seen people who were very well studied in the faith, who knew all the doctrines, and then when a trial came, their faith fell apart. Some of them even becoming atheists, for goodness sake. I just felt they were not able to survive a great trial, a great storm. And I think the reason is they're students, they weren't disciples. So I put it this way. So the first one is, he's describing a disciple, which is, in our language today, an apprentice. Whereas this guy here who hears and doesn't do them, he is a student, nothing more. And a student forgets pretty much everything he learns in class. I don't know about you, but I'm looking back to my college education. I'm like, I can't remember anything of what I learned in college, right?
I
Nothing.
remember the stuff I've used.
Yeah, stuff you use, you remember. I can't remember anything. Like I was a math major, and I can barely remember anything of calculus or these other courses that, and I was good at those things. But no, you use it or lose it, right? And so the disciple is one who hears those words, and his aim is not to go into the depths of them and try to unravel the mysteries and all the depths of them. His aim is, I want to put it into practice. I want to live by these things. And you don't need a college education to understand what Jesus means when he says, forgive one another. Bless those who curse you. Pray for those who persecute you. Love your enemies. You don't need master's degrees and PhDs to figure these things out. It's about applying them, and that's where his focus is, which I love, which I think is why Jesus in his disciples, you'll notice he chooses mostly working class men who understand these concepts, and he doesn't seem to have much interest in the academics of his day. He doesn't call all people out of the seminaries and the Pharisees and the rabbis. He takes a tax collector, he takes some fishermen, he himself's a carpenter, because for them it's not about learning stuff, it's about doing what you've been learning, practicing it, so it really becomes a part of you. So that concludes, I think, the Sermon on the Plain here. Any comments on this before we break? That was a lot to reflect upon here. So, all right. Okay, I'm gonna stop recording here.